She had that Mr. Punch thing going on. It was just coming down to put a little kiss on the edge of the chin and up again. Because Jimmy Hill was the model for the original Mr. Punch. Something from you, Peps.
Well, this is from Jez. This is the long one. This is he says, I'm not sure if I will call this stupid tourist, but as I have started this email before Christmas 2019, you may have had a few categories it would fit since then, which actually I think is, do you know who you were talking to? He's now fitted in.
Okay.
It was the early noughties, and my girlfriend and I were invited to a wedding in Prague. We'd never been before, and it's a beautiful city. We stayed over for a few days, and at the end of each day touristing, we went back to our guest house and then go to the same riverside bar for beer and cheese sticks, which sound delightful. We had great views through large plates.
You know cheese sticks? You know cheese sticks? Of course you do.
Oh, well, like a cheese straw?
Yeah. It's a cheese.
Or like your mozzarella...
Oh, I see. No, actually, sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted.
It doesn't matter. It's not relevant.
It's a grey area.
It's not relevant. Anyway, this bar had views through lovely large plate glass windows across tram tracks to the river, etc.
Mm-hmm.
We stepped into the cafe this day to find it was absolutely packed. Not deterred, with a sense of real entitlement, we'd only been there 4 days, we strode down until we saw a booth with only 2 people in it. As we neared, I noticed that the booth next to it had what I can only describe as Eastern European heavies sat in it in nonchalant poses. We ignored them, walked straight up to the booth with spare seats where a man and woman were deep in conversation, and pointing to the spaces, I asked if we could join them, and pointed to his coat and briefcase and asked him to move them. He smiled and did, and we slid in. A few minutes later, an old crone appeared and hobbled to our table. She mumbled to him, pulled out a creased piece of paper. He signed it and handed it back to her, and she gratefully retreated, lots of head nodding. Trams would trundle past occasionally, not unusual, but one tram stopped at the lights and was full of school kids. They kept looking our way through the window and then started to wave. 20 to 30 kids pressed up against tram windows, waving away. We leaned forward so we could be properly seen around the couple next to us and waved furiously back with our big touristy smiles. The kids were still waving and off they went. Then the manager and a waitress approached the table with a presentation bottle of expensive whiskey. He tried to present it to the gentleman in the booth, who wouldn't accept it, and the man retreated respectfully. That name sounded familiar, I whispered to my girlfriend and pulled out my guidebook and went through it. Ah, yes, he led the Velvet Revolution in 1989.
Oh!
Then, one of the barrel-chested ponytail chaps in the next booth held a mobile phone to his ear, passed it to the man next to us, and as his black jacket swung open, there we saw a submachine gun.
Oh!
I now reassured my girlfriend in a squeaky voice, everything's fine, we're in a public place. Shortly afterwards, the entire booth behind us stood up and the gentleman and his partner rose, and they all left the bar with everyone turning to look at them. Outriders then appeared and limousines.
Wow.
And stopped to allow them to enter the limousine, do a U-turn, park over the other side of the road and glide up the stone steps into the National Theatre. This is all a bit mystifying. As my girlfriend went off to the loo, I went up to the bar and started looking at the newspapers. There on the front page was a very large picture of the gentleman we'd sat next to. Underneath, I read the name, Václav Havel, President of the Czech Republic.
Well, you'd have thought they'd have been just shooed away from the table.
Well, as he says, a gong went off in my head and the warming of my cheeks as it came into focus. We had strolled through his security cordon, asked him to move his coat and briefcase, sat next to him, waved at the school children who were attracting his attention, that still makes me wince, and then nonchalantly looked him up in a Lonely Planet guide while he was sat next to us.
Wow, that shows you can get mixed up in trouble abroad. Anyone who's ever been mixed up in not necessarily riots, but I love stories where people say,
well, as he says, he must have been a gentleman because he must have signalled to the security team that we were fine to stay there and let us sit for 45 minutes waving to his fans.
That's true. Who sent us that?
That was Jez in Stockport.
Thank you very much, Jez. Now, just on